Hey guys, Brian Wilson here, and today I'm going to talk to you about your regional and or all-state audition on Euphonium. First of all, please play every single articulation that you see on the page, okay? It is kind of a test whether or not you can play exactly what's on the page, not just your best version of it. Play every single articulation. When Doug Akewes was writing these, I mean, he wrote him some tricks and some pitfalls and some speed bumps for you. And for the auditioner, you definitely want to play those for him, okay? Play those for the auditioner, every single articulation. So as I'm looking at these, I see a bunch of different things. I see some breath marks, and the thing is, you've got to take those breaths, okay? They're not optional. You want to definitely take those breaths. But let's go back even before the audition actually starts. When you walk in, make sure you make the room a little bit yours, okay? If there's no chair, sometimes people think, hey, I've got to stand. If you want to stand, stand. If you don't, make sure you sit, okay? If you're used to sitting and playing, great, sit and play. Don't feel like you need to play standing up, or if you want to stand and there's a chair, move the chair out of the way. Just be careful about moving the stand. Just be careful moving the stand, because a lot of times they put it in the right spot. 2, to go along with the room, make sure your bell is not going at the auditioner. Let's try to bounce it a little bit away so they get not a directional sound from you. Remember, euphonium sounds best after it's bounced off a few things. So think about how it's going to bounce and then get to the auditioner so you can fill that room. Because you'll be in a variety of different rooms, so you don't know what it's going to feel like. Please feel free to play a couple of notes. That's fine. Just don't practice. Don't practice. You want to get a feel of the room, and that's about it. That's about it. Now, the number one thing that I can tell you, guys, you got to know your scales, okay? You don't know what are the 12 scales they're going to ask. I bet they're going to ask something that's 2 octaves. But they may ask for 1 octave in regionals, but for All-State, it's probably only going to be 2 octaves. But guys, guess what? They are going to ask you for your chromatic. And when I play chromatic, there's only one way to play chromatic. Either you're going to play it in one breath in triplets, so like yat da 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 da, all in one breath. But if you can't do it in one breath and it's going to stink, then you have to play it just slow enough that you can still take a breath after a note. Okay, don't add any weird stuff. Don't leave notes out. Don't ask quarter rest. Okay, it's either da 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 da, that type of thing, or da 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 da, whatever tempo. Okay, but everybody's going to play chromatic, and they're going to play chromatic from low E natural to high B flat. Last thing I'll say about the scales is don't forget that playing extra octaves is not going to give you extra credit, because I have a 4th valve on the side, they cannot mandate anything that has anything more than a 3-valve euphonium. Same thing for trombone. Nothing that can that can be played by a triggered trombone. So you want to make sure that you're not giving them extra stuff, because if you play 2 octaves and they ask for 1, you didn't do it right. On that same thing, don't forget, if they tell you to do it tongued, you've got a tongue. If they say to do it slurred, you've got it slurred. If they don't say, and they're going to say, if they don't say, though, I would slur. You're going to sound best that way, because that way they're not judging your articulation. They shouldn't. It should just be whether or not you played the scale well. All right, so let's get into the etudes. Mind comments now are going to be for set 1. All right, for etude number 1, not a lot of pitfalls, but I do want you to watch out for a couple things. First of all, again, this is the articulation exercise. Are you going to get everything in there? Because I see almost every articulation in this one, from staccato, tenuto, marcato, accent, they're all there. The other trip fall is on the 3rd line. It says crescendo poco poco. Take your pencil out right now and please write in the crescendo. You're supposed to go from subito piano, the line before, subito instantly piano, and crescendo up to fortissimo. And what most people will do is they'll come down, they'll forget that it says crescendo, and then they'll hit fortissimo loud at the end. So don't forget about the crescendo. But other than that, it's pretty easy. Watch out for the terrace dynamics, the subitos. And other than that, practice it slow. I think this is an etude you can play at tempo. 104 is maybe a little bit on the bright side, but definitely doable. Okay, now for etude number 2, Andante, 8th note equals 96. You don't want to overplay the piano at the beginning, but you do want to make sure that you're starting with a good sound. Overall, there's no terrace dynamics here. You want to play as pretty as possible. This is the etude that you're probably going to be able to demonstrate your vibrato, and there are a few places for you to do so that are longer. If you can't do vibrato, just make sure you're not hitting those notes and being stagnant. Do something with them. Crescendo up, crescendo down. Give it some direction. Okay, and if you can do vibrato, then do the same thing with a little bit of vibrato, and don't just do the vibraphone thing where it's like this. Give a little shape to it, okay? But other than that, it's just a little up and down as far as the dynamics, but you want to wait for that forte. How big are you going to play that? Take a nice deep breath, and on the 2nd line forte, really go through that, really pull the sound all the way through. You're probably going to have to crescendo because you're going down in pitch, and you're going to get softer, so crescendo through that. And then we terrace down a little bit down to mezzo piano. And then at the end, no rubato to the end. Play straight through to the end. A little bit up to the mezzo forte, back down. Hold the note longer than the dotted quarter note. And then give us a nice little fade off. All right, guys, these are my comments for etude number 3. Now, for the most part, this is an etude, again, that you can play at 108. It's a little bit on the bright side, maybe except for 2 measures. I found it difficult, and that would be on the 2nd line, last 2 measures. Why? It wasn't so much the 16th notes. It was coming out of the 16th notes into a 2-note slur and a 3-note slur and getting those articulated correctly. The fingering pattern's pretty easy, though, so it's not like you're doing some crazy fingerings with a bunch of sharps and whatnot. So it is doable. If you want to play a little slower, that's fine. Remember, you want to be as close to 108 as possible, but if you're going to suck at 108, okay, and you're going to play great at 102 or 104, that's close enough. That's going to be fine. That's going to be fine. You're going to play best at your best tempo. Just hopefully it's close enough to the tempo. But remember, you're not going to get extra points for playing faster. So don't come in and try to play 120 and try to show off, because that's not the tempo that was given to you. All right, what else do I see here? I see a lot of bounce in it, but make sure that you're not bouncing more on a quarter note that doesn't have an accent versus the notes that do have an accent. So dum, ba, be, dum. Okay, you want to make sure that you do that bigger than maybe you're bouncing the first note, and that's fine. You can give it a little lift to this. Now, the one thing to remember, second line, it says leggero, and that means to play lightly, and also piano. And I'm going to do that for that whole rest of the line until I come to the crescendo. So be careful about crescendoing before you're supposed to, okay? Other than that, really give us a good zinger at the end for the sforzando, but practice, make sure that note doesn't crack up on you, all right? And once you do that, you take a deep breath, and then you're on to sight reading, my friends. All right, so those are my comments for Etude number 3. All right, guys, comments for the All-State Etudes, Etude number 4. Now, this was my least favorite etude of the whole set, of all 5 ones. And why? There's just not a lot of great places to breathe. If you play it faster, you're playing it faster, and your breath goes by quicker, but I didn't really find that it was any easier. So here's what you're going to have to do. A, you got to be able to play at a tempo. B, you got to be able to get that tempo as close to 100 as you possibly can, no faster than that. And then C, you got to take your pencil out and start writing down where you're going to take breaths. If you find you can't get it all the way through, taking earlier breaths when you didn't think that you needed to, and you're not able to make it all the way to the end, then you're going to have to maybe strategize some different breaths, or maybe even leaving a note out. So for example, when I was playing it, the first line, every so often I would try to catch a breath after those eighth notes, because there's only a couple of eighth notes on the first line, right? I'm going to take one breath there. Second line, I took a breath on the second line, second measure after the first eighth note. And then when we get to the 4/4, I try to breathe twice. I'm really trying to take up, because there's not a lot of time to breathe. I'm not able to take up in that short amount of time. I'm just trying to get as much air as I can in. And then be careful about overdoing your dynamics before the fortissimo, because if you really go through it, you're going to waste your air too soon. So you want to keep that mezzo forte in the beginning and the piano down low enough to conserve some of the air. When you get to the fortissimo, you got to go. And the only place I found after that to take a breath was between the triplets on that third line. And that was tough. That's really quick, and it's really tough to get a gasp in there just to see if you make it towards the end. And I did not like taking a breath in the triplets on the last line, but I did like taking a breath after the dotted eighth at the end, but you're so close. If you feel like you can make it, that's great, but it does say fermata at the end, so it's not going to be a quick out, right? And you definitely don't want to peter out and have that be the last thing the auditioner makes or listens to. Okay, so where would I leave some notes out? Well, if you have to, I would maybe look at the third line if you're not able to make through that, or the fourth line. So the last set of 16th notes on the third line, first set of 16ths on the fourth line are the places that I would try to take a breath. One of them, not both of them. So I might do... And maybe take a breath there on the G on the fourth line, leaving that one out. Okay, I would not leave it out on 1 or on any other beat there. So you leave it out on the 1 E, okay, right on that one. And you can do it on the measure before that. Is fine. I don't think that you should take a breath and leave a note out on the triplets. But you know what? You're going to do what you got to do to get all the way through. Be careful about pushing yourself, though, so that you feel strained when you get to the rallentando at the end. They definitely know practicing this, trying to breathe, not because of fingers, but trying to practice making it towards the end, that I can, but sometimes I feel like I'm squeezed. Now, you may have a much larger lung capacity than I do, and that's great for you. Or you might be a little smaller, and it might be harder for you to catch those breaths, and maybe so you're really taking chances and leaving more notes out. You can do that in several other places. So if you're on the first line and you have to take a breath, if you're going to leave a note out, again, I would breathe on the E. okay, of whatever group of 16th notes. But try not to do it very often, and definitely write it down. Other than that, you got to think past the breathing, right? Because you still got to tell a story. So make sure this is not just about making and achieving this etude, but playing better than everybody else there, because you're telling a story, you're making music happen, you're not just playing a bunch of notes and demonstrating that you can do the breaths. Okay, so good luck, guys. This is you definitely can do it, but don't play faster. If you have to play a little slower, that's fine. Make sure it's your best rendition, regardless of what you're doing. All right? Good luck, guys. All right, etude number 5. You've come to the end of all the etudes, and this one's a nice one. The only thing that I will say about this is that on some of these, there weren't a lot. At 96, sometimes it can be a little quick for you to do vibrato. So when you get a chance to do vibrato, if you can do it, definitely throw it in. Definitely throw it in. Don't make it feel forced. But, the longer the notes, obviously, the more I'd like to hear some vibrato on that, especially the top of the phrase. But it happens very quickly. Things to watch out for as you're playing on this, though. On the second line, you just ended the first line at mezzo forte, and then you're going down low. Please come in loud, right, at the mezzo forte, and then decrescendo. That's the only time when I've worked with students before and practicing myself, I tend to want to start soft and crescendo, and that's not what the line is. That's not what's written there. So please make sure you practice ba-da-da-da-da-dee-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, that type of thing where you're playing louder and you're going up in pitch, so you're going to get louder, so you're really going to have to pull back. Watch out for those moments because it only goes up to mezzo forte. Don't overdo it yet. Your forte comes at the very end, okay, on that last line. And you want to save it. You don't want to say that your mezzo forte and your fortes are the same. They're supposed to be different levels of dynamics. Other than that one, this is pretty straightforward. I mean, you're going to have to read the sharps, and you're going to have to read the articulations, the dynamics, and the rhythms on the page. Other than that, just make sure this is nice and pretty. I did have to do a couple of takes myself when I was practicing this last line. Forte all the way up to the caesura. Take a nice breath. Come in at piano, not too soft. Don't lose the note. And then pull back. Okay, menemoso. Okay, less and less tempo. Okay? Hey guys, good luck, all right? This is going to be a good one for you. You're going to like this. All right, guys, keep in mind, regionals and all-state isn't a real big test of your ability to play the instrument. You've got to judge. It's a game. It's blind. Everybody goes in there, gets a chance to throw the dart, gets a chance to do their free throw. The better you're prepared to play these etudes, the more likely you're able to do that in the audition room. Make sure you can do these anywhere, anytime, anyhow. Maybe you haven't warmed up, play through the etudes. What would it be like? Do the whole thing. Don't keep stopping. You have to make sure you get through these without stopping and fixing that because you won't be able to do that in the room. Make sure you put some scales on some cards, deal yourself out some of those scales, play a chromatic scale, take a deep breath, start with etude number 1, etude number 2, etude number 3. Stop, take a breath, open up something, sight read. Stop. That was your audition. How'd you feel? Do it again. Get used to that. If they ask for etude number 3, then 2, number 1, that's okay. The audition is what the audition is, right? Okay, so if they want to do it a slightly different order, that's up to the auditioner. So don't be freaked out by that. Just be ready for that. Make the room your own, and you just got to turn that switch on the back of your neck on, focus, and I'm at home in my practice room. It's just me and my music, and I'm going to try to play my very best, regardless of what it says on the page. I'm going to try to play my very best. Last thing, 75%, I think, of making regionals and all-state is literally playing exactly what's on the page really well. And the last 25% is who's going to do it with the most amount of artistry. Who's going to do it with the most amount of tone. And if that's you, then you're going to make regionals and all-state. All right, guys? Good luck.